Khalid Al-Mansoor was the kind of man who could silence a crowded room without saying a word. At 47, he carried himself with a confidence carved from decades of privilege, wealth, and power. His fortune came from oil, generations of desert land transformed into empires of steel, glass, and endless pipelines. But behind his carefully crafted public image, there was something else. A gnawing emptiness, a loneliness disguised beneath layers of luxury. The sprawling mansion he called home glittered at night, like a palace from another age. Gold-lined hallways reflected chandeliers, and marble floors echoed with the sound of his measured footsteps. But no voices filled the rooms. No laughter spilled from its corners. The silence of his home was heavy, oppressive, an echo of marriages that had crumbled, of children who kept their distance, and of business associates who smiled at him in daylight, but sharpened their knives in the dark. Khalid's charm was undeniable. To the outside world, he was magnetic, an eloquent speaker at charity galas, a refined gentleman in tailored suits, a man whose smile could warm or intimidate with equal precision. Yet, that charm was not freely given. It was a weapon, a carefully sharpened tool he used to bend others toward his will. On nights when he entertained guests, the mansion came alive. Politicians, investors, models, and celebrities floated through his grand halls, sipping champagne, their laughter bouncing off the marble. He played host with ease, every gesture smooth, every word calculated. But when the last guest departed and the servants cleared the glasses, the silence returned, deafening, unavoidable. In those private hours, Khalid revealed himself to the few who truly knew him, a man who feared irrelevance, who feared losing control. His wealth, his empire, his reputation, they were shields, yes, but also chains. He could not bear to be vulnerable, could not bear to be seen as anything less than powerful. And so, in his relationships, he demanded control. His lovers often mistook his generosity for affection, his gifts for devotion. But beneath the surface, those gestures were binding ropes, tightening until escape seemed impossible. One evening, as he stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his study, the city lights of Dubai stretched endlessly beneath him. The desert beyond flickered in the moonlight, a reminder of both his origins and his empire. He sipped from a crystal glass of aged whiskey, his thoughts wandering to the years he had lost, to ex-wives who walked away with pieces of his fortune, to sons who resisted his influence, to friends who betrayed him when profit outweighed loyalty. The door creaked open behind him. His personal assistant, a thin man in a tailored vest, cleared his throat. "Sir, shall I prepare for tomorrow's meeting with the board?" Khalid didn't turn. His voice was calm, steady, but carried the weight of iron. Everything must be ready. They expect strength, not hesitation. The assistant nodded and slipped back into the shadows. Khalid remained by the window, his reflection staring back at him. Strong, commanding, untouchable. And yet, in the hollow of his chest, he felt that quiet ache, the one he never admitted aloud. What he craved most wasn't another business victory or another glittering party. It was connection, something real, something unbought. He would never confess it, but in that emptiness lay his greatest vulnerability. He set the glass down, the ice clinking faintly, and exhaled. Somewhere beyond those glowing towers, his path was about to cross with someone unexpected, someone who would shatter the delicate balance of his world. And when she arrived, nothing, neither his wealth nor his charm nor his power, would save him. The following morning, as the desert sun poured its golden light across Dubai's skyline, the city awakened in glittering brilliance. Towers of steel and glass caught the dawn, their edges glowing like sharpened blades. In the heart of that modern empire, new stories began every day. Stories of fortune, desire, and ruin. Among the endless tourists who flocked to the city's luxury resorts was Emily Foster, a 29-year-old woman whose arrival went unnoticed by most. She was not wealthy, nor did she travel with the confidence of those born into money. She carried herself with an air of someone running from the past, eyes always searching, never lingering too long, as though shadows still followed her across oceans. Emily had come from Boston, leaving behind a tangle of debts, broken relationships, and mistakes she preferred not to name. To her, Dubai was a promise of escape, a place where anonymity and reinvention seemed possible. The luxury resort where she checked in was unlike anything she had ever known. Palm trees swayed in manicured gardens, and marble fountains whispered over pools of turquoise water. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to breathe. She sat near the infinity pool that afternoon, her hair loose around her shoulders, a half-finished cocktail sweating on the glass table. Around her, wealthy couples and jet-setters reclined on loungers, laughing as attendants brought endless trays of fruit and champagne. Emily was both part of the scene and apart from it, a guest in a world that didn't quite feel hers. It was there that Khalid Al-Mansoor first noticed her. He had come to the resort to meet a business associate, but his eyes caught Emily's figure by the water. The way she leaned forward with restless grace, the way her loneliness seemed to radiate to the laughter of others. To Khalid, accustomed to women who flaunted their desire for his wealth, Emily was different. There was hesitation in her smile, a kind of fragility that intrigued him. He approached casually, a man entirely at home in this environment, his tailored linen suit catching the sunlight. Emily glanced up, startled, as a shadow fell across her table. "You look like someone who hasn't quite decided whether she belongs here," he said softly, his accent rich, his tone calculated. Emily blinked, uncertain whether to laugh or retreat. "Maybe I don't," she admitted. Khalid smiled, lowering himself into the seat opposite her, without waiting for permission. His presence was commanding, yet disarming at once. Dubai can feel overwhelming to newcomers, but sometimes it takes someone who knows the city to make it feel like home. Their eyes held for a moment. Emily's pulse quickened, not entirely from attraction, but from the gravity of his presence. She had met men before, men with charm and confidence, but none radiated the sense of control Khalid exuded so effortlessly. Over the next hour, their conversation drifted from small talk to deeper subjects. Her travels, his business ventures vaguely described, her love for art, his admiration for strength in others. He laughed at her dry wit. She blushed under the intensity of his gaze. And though she told herself it was just conversation, something about the encounter stirred a dangerous curiosity inside her. When Khalid finally rose to leave, he leaned closer, his cologne subtle yet lingering. "I'll be here again tomorrow. Perhaps I'll see you." Emily hesitated, then nodded. "Maybe." As he walked away, she exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That night, back in her hotel suite, Emily stood before the window overlooking the glowing city. The memory of Khalid's voice lingered in her mind. Part of her warned that this was dangerous, that men like him never came without a cost. And yet, beneath her caution, another part whispered of opportunity, of safety, of a life she had never been able to build on her own. For Khalid, it had begun as idle curiosity. For Emily, it was a first step into a world she both desired and feared. What neither of them knew was that this fleeting meeting would ignite a fire, one that would consume them both. Their meetings quickly became routine. At first, Emily told herself it was chance, that Khalid happened to be at the resort when she was. But within a week, there was no denying it. He sought her out deliberately, each encounter more deliberate, more intoxicating than the last. Soon, their conversations no longer ended by the pool. Khalid invited her into his world. Chauffeured cars appeared at the resort gate, waiting to whisk her away to restaurants perched atop skyscrapers, private beach clubs reserved for the elite, and desert getaways where silence stretched beneath endless stars. Emily was swept up, her life transformed in a matter of weeks. One moment, she was wandering foreign streets with nothing but a guidebook and a suitcase. The next, she was draped in silk, sipping champagne on a yacht that cut across the Gulf like a blade. Khalid's generosity seemed boundless. Jewelry boxes appeared on her bedside table. Designer dresses fit her wardrobe as though they had always been hers. Plane tickets bore her name alongside his, destinations unfurling like a dream. And yet, beneath the glow of luxury, shadows lurked. Emily noticed it in the small things at first. The way Khalid never asked but instructed, the way he dismissed waiters with a flick of his hand, the way his gaze lingered on her not as if she were a woman, but as if she were a possession. She admired him. Yes, she desired him. But there was also something else, a tightening thread around her freedom. One evening, as they sat in his marble-floored lounge, Khalid poured her a glass of wine. To new beginnings, he said smoothly, raising his glass. Emily clinked hers hesitantly. And to choices, she murmured. His smile faltered just slightly. Choices, he repeated, as though the word itself were foreign. The silence that followed was thin but sharp. It wasn't only Emily who felt the imbalance. Within Khalid's circle, his friends, his business partners, his ever-watchful staff, whispers began to circulate. Some said she was different, more innocent, perhaps even genuine. Others dismissed her entirely, labeling her another in a long line of Western women drawn to Khalid's wealth like moths to flame. She'll be gone within months, one of his associates muttered during a cigar-filled evening. Just another plaything like the rest. Khalid heard the comments, but he never corrected them. His silence was as calculated as his words, a shield against revealing what Emily was beginning to mean to him, or what power she might eventually hold. For Emily, the rumors seeped through like poison. A hostess at one of Khalid's gatherings leaned in too close, whispering just loud enough. "You're not the first, you know. He always finds someone." The word struck Emily harder than she cared to admit. That night, alone in a bedroom far grander than any she had known, Emily stared at the diamond necklace Khalid had given her. It sparkled in the low light, heavy in her hand. Was it a gift or a leash? Her reflection in the mirror showed a woman she barely recognized, adorned, admired, but hollow-eyed. She couldn't deny the thrill of luxury, nor the comfort of Khalid's attention, but deep down she wondered, was this love or a transaction cleverly disguised as affection? As weeks turned into months, the line blurred further. Emily's independence shrank, step by step, until her choices seemed less her own. Khalid's world was intoxicating, but it carried a price, one she had not yet begun to fully understand. And in the quiet of her heart, resentment began to flicker, fragile but growing. She didn't yet know it, but this imbalance, the tension between admiration and dependence, would soon spiral into something darker, something she could neither predict nor control. The necklace still glimmered on Emily's dresser, a jewel in the shadows. To outsiders, she looked like a woman who had stepped into a fairy tale, gowned in luxury, adored by one of Dubai's wealthiest men. But as the weeks stretched on, the fairy tale grew brittle. The shine of diamonds could not silence the gnawing doubts echoing in her mind. It began with whispers. At a dinner one evening, seated beside two of Khalid's longtime acquaintances, Emily caught the faintest edge of condescension in their tone. "Pretty, isn't she?" one man murmured, not bothering to lower his voice. "He has a type." The woman beside him smirked. "They never last. Not once he tires of playing Prince." Emily's stomach twisted. She forced a smile, but the laughter around the table felt suddenly sharp, as though every face had a private knowledge she was denied. The next morning, curiosity pushed her further. While Khalid was locked away in a business meeting, Emily wandered his study. Shelves lined with leather-bound ledgers and framed photographs drew her closer. Some frames contained glamorous women, models, actresses, faces she faintly recognized. Smiles frozen in time, arms looped around Khalid's. Her fingertips brushed over one frame. The woman's smile was radiant, but her eyes told a different story, strained, weary. Emily couldn't explain why, but the look sent a chill down her spine. That evening, she tried to mask her unease. Khalid noticed anyway. "You're quiet tonight," he said, pouring her a glass of wine. "I was just looking at the photos in your study." Khalid's gaze sharpened instantly. "Those are private," he said, his voice even but firm. "I mean, some things," he interrupted, "are better left in the past." The moment passed, but Emily could not shake the edge in his tone. For the first time, she wondered if the warmth he showed her was a mask that could be dropped at any second. Days later, she learned more, this time not from photographs, but from hushed voices. A maid, emboldened by pity or perhaps envy, whispered while turning down the sheets. "He doesn't let them go. None of them. When they try to leave, he finds a way to keep them." Emily froze. "What do you mean?" But the maid only shook her head. Her eyes darted the hallway and hurried out before answering. The words festered. She began to notice small things she had overlooked before. Her phone, once left untouched, now sometimes showed signs of tampering. battery lower than expected, recent calls oddly logged. When she tried to go shopping alone, Khalid insisted a driver accompany her. "For your safety," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The luxury around her, once intoxicating, now felt like velvet chains. One afternoon, while scrolling through social media, Emily stumbled on a story in a gossip column. A model European young who had once been linked to Khalid. The article hinted at a scandal, at whispered claims of control, manipulation, sudden disappearances from public life. Emily stared at the words until they blurred, her pulse racing. That night, when Khalid returned, she tried to broach the subject carefully. "Do people ever misunderstand you?" she asked, forcing her voice to sound casual. Khalid's eyes locked onto hers, dark and unblinking. "People are jealous of power," he said. "They invent lies to comfort themselves. You should know better than to listen." His hand rested on hers, but there was no comfort in the weight. It felt more like a warning. In the days that followed, Khalid's behavior shifted subtly but unmistakably. His questions about her whereabouts grew sharper, his calls more frequent, his insistence on knowing who she spoke to, what she did, when she returned, all cloaked in the language of protection. "You're mine now," he whispered one evening, as though it were a vow. But to Emily, it sounded like a sentence. She lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, her body wrapped in silk sheets that suddenly felt suffocating. A truth had begun to take root in her mind. Khalid's affection was not love. It was possession. And in the weeks ahead, when her body began to change and the whispers of a new life stirred within her, that possession would twist into something far more dangerous. The first signs were subtle: nausea in the mornings, a strange fatigue that left Emily struggling to rise from bed despite the endless comfort of silk sheets and servants waiting with trays of fruit. She brushed it off at first, blaming jet lag, stress, or the heavy meals Khalid insisted they share late at night. But when the dizziness grew worse, she bought a test in secret. Alone in the marble-tiled bathroom of Khalid's penthouse, she sat trembling on the edge of the tub, the thin strip of plastic clutched in her hands. The seconds stretched like hours. When the result appeared, 2 faint lines, her breath caught in her throat. Pregnant, her hand flew to her stomach. A rush of fear flooded her first. How could this happen? What would Khalid say? But underneath the fear was something else. Hope. For the first time since she'd met him, she saw a possibility beyond being just another name in his gallery of lovers. A child could anchor her here, make her more than temporary. Maybe, she thought, this could be her redemption, her chance at a real family. That night, she tried to eat dinner with him as usual, but her hands shook too much to hold her fork. Khalid noticed immediately. "You're quiet," he said, setting down his glass. "What is it?" Emily's lips parted, then closed again. Her heart pounded. Finally, she forced the words out. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, silence. Only the faint clink of a chandelier's crystal filled the room. Khalid stared at her as though she had spoken in another language. "Pregnant?" he repeated slowly. Emily nodded, eyes searching his face for warmth, for recognition, for joy. Instead, his expression hardened. His jaw clenched. His glass at the table with a sharp crack. "This cannot happen." The word struck her like a slap. "What do you mean it can't happen?" she whispered. "You don't understand," he snapped, his voice rising. "I have children already. Grown. A family. An inheritance that is carefully divided. A scandal like this, an illegitimate child, it would destroy everything." Emily's chest tightened. "Destroy everything? This is a baby. Our baby." Khalid's eyes narrowed. "No, this is a mistake. You will end it." Her breath caught. She shook her head. "No, I can't. I won't. This could be your downfall," he interrupted coldly. "You think this child will secure your place in my life? That it will bind me to you?" His voice was a blade, each word cutting deeper. Emily's fragile hope crumbled under the weight of his fury. The argument stretched late into the night. Emily pleaded, insisting that this was fate, that perhaps the child could be a bridge between their worlds. Khalid countered with threats of disgrace, of ruin, of abandonment. The mask of charm he once wore had slipped entirely. replaced by the cold steel of the man obsessed with control. When she finally retreated to the bedroom, her eyes were swollen from tears. She lay curled on the bed, hand protectively over her stomach, the silence pressing down like a suffocating blanket. Khalid remained in his study, pacing, pouring glass after glass of whiskey, his mind spiraling with calculations. How to contain the scandal, how to silence her if necessary. For Emily, the child had become more than just life growing inside her. It was resistance. It was proof that she was more than a plaything, more than a passing distraction. But for Khalid, it was the ultimate threat, a loss of control he could not tolerate. The glamorous affair that had once dazzled her now felt rotten at its core, poisoned by fear and betrayal. She no longer saw him as a savior, but as a man willing to destroy anything that challenged his power, even her. In the stillness of the early hours, Emily whispered to herself, voice shaking, "I won't let him take this from me." But deep down, she already knew Khalid would try, and his attempts would drag them both into a war neither could escape. The morning after Emily's revelation passed in tense silence. Khalid left early, his footsteps heavy across the marble floors, his driver waiting outside with the engine running. He did not kiss her goodbye, did not offer even a glance. Emily sat alone at the breakfast table, the untouched spread before her a reminder of everything hollow in this gilded life. By evening, he returned, his face unreadable, his voice calm in a way that chilled her more than anger ever could. He found her on the balcony, gazing at the lights glittering across the skyline. "We need to talk," he said. Emily's heart hammered. She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself as if to shield against the weight of his words. Khalid stepped closer, his tone measured. "You must understand. This pregnancy cannot continue. I will make arrangements. Quietly, you will be compensated, and you will never have to worry about money again." Her breath caught. "Compensated? I will take care of you," he pressed. "Apartments, an allowance, whatever you wish. But this child, it will not exist." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "It's not just a child. It's our child. Don't you see? This could be something real, something good." Khalid's expression hardened, steel flashing behind his eyes. "You think a child will change what we are? No, it will destroy us. My family, my business, my reputation. Do not be naive." She shook her head, backing away from him. "I won't do it. I won't get rid of this baby. You can't make me." His jaw tightened. He moved forward, his presence looming, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous calm. "Everything you have is because of me. The clothes you wear, the roof over your head, the very air you breathe in this world of mine. I gave it to you. Do not mistake generosity for equality." Emily's chest heaved, her fingers clutching the balcony rail. "So that's all I am to you? Something you bought? Something you own?" Khalid's silence was more terrifying than rage. He simply stared at her, eyes dark with a quiet certainty. "I am giving you a chance," he said finally. "Do what I ask, and I will protect you. Refuse, and I cannot promise what will happen." The words settled over her like a death sentence. For days afterward, the arguments continued, each more venomous than the last. Sometimes Khalid pleaded, his tone softening as he promised her a future of comfort if she obeyed. Other times, he turned cruel, his voice lashing like a whip. One night, in a rare attempt at gentleness, he cupped her cheek. "Emily, you don't understand the world I live in. There are rules. People are watching. If they discover this, child, it will not just be you who suffers. It will be me. My name. My legacy." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Then maybe your legacy isn't worth saving." His hand dropped from her face. The mask of control slipped, and for a moment she saw raw fury flash across his expression. "You are making a mistake," he whispered, his voice shaking not from fear, but from rage suppressed too long. Emily turned away, pressing her palms to her stomach. The life growing inside her had become more than just hope. It was a rebellion, her only leverage against a man who saw her as property. But Khalid would not let go. He tightened his grip on her movements, watching her more closely, calling her phone if she left the room too long. What he once framed as affection now revealed itself as surveillance. One evening, When she asked to go out with friends she'd met at the resort, Khalid's reply was chilling. "You don't need friends. You need me. Only me." The words carved into her like a blade. Emily began to realize that she was no longer living in paradise. The gilded walls of Khalid's world were a prison, and each day the bars grew closer, and as his pressure mounted, as his power closed around her throat, she knew it was only a matter of time before he took drastic measures to ensure her obedience. The decision came without warning. One evening, after another circular argument about the pregnancy, Khalid announced they were leaving. "You and I need space," he said firmly, his tone carrying no room for protest. "Too many distractions here. We'll go somewhere private, where we can think clearly." Emily wanted to refuse, but his gaze, unyielding, commanding, made her words die in her throat. The next morning, a sleek black car whisked her away from the city skyline she had grown to love, carrying her deep into the desert. The villa appeared like a mirage. Sprawling marble terraces, infinity pools spilling into the horizon, palm trees swaying as if painted into place. It was breathtaking, but there was something suffocating beneath its beauty. Inside, every detail was pristine. Silk curtains, polished stone floors, chandeliers that glittered like ice. Yet, when Emily reached for her phone to call her sister back in the U.S., she realized the signal was gone. Khalid noticed her hesitation. Out here, the world cannot intrude. No noise. Just us. His smile was gentle, but to Emily it felt like a mask. At first, she tried to believe him. Maybe this retreat could mend their fractures. Maybe the isolation would soften his anger. But within days, the truth became clear. The gates were guarded. The doors locked from the outside. Her laptop disappeared without explanation. Each time she asked to go for a walk beyond the villa's walls, Khalid's response was the same. "It's not safe. Stay inside." What once felt like luxury now pressed down on her chest. The pools and gardens were cages disguised as paradise. Nights grew harder. Khalid's presence was constant. His footsteps in the hallway, his shadow in the doorway, his eyes following her even when she pretended not to notice. Conversations shifted from negotiation to command. "You will reconsider," he said one night, pacing the room while she sat frozen on the couch. "You are too emotional now, but with time you will see reason." Emily clenched her fists. "Reason? You mean surrender. You want me to erase the only thing that belongs to me." Khalid's expression darkened. "You belong to me. Do not forget that." The words cut deeper than any threat. Days blurred into each other. The villa became a labyrinth of silence, her world shrinking to the confines of its glittering rooms. She counted hours by the sun's movement across the floor, each dusk bringing a deeper weight of despair. One afternoon, she tried a door she hadn't noticed before, discreetly tucked behind the staircase. It rattled but wouldn't open. A key was missing. When Khalid later caught her lingering near it, his hand gripped her wrist with quiet warning. "Some rooms are not for you." The grip loosened, but the bruising reminder lingered. Emily's paranoia swelled. At night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every choice that led her here. She wondered if anyone outside even knew where she was. If she vanished tomorrow, who would ask questions? Who would come? The villa hummed with beauty and menace in equal measure. Its perfection made her imperfection scream louder. The mirrors reflected a woman she barely recognized, hair unkempt, eyes sunken, lips trembling with unshed words. By the fifth day, she realized something vital. This wasn't about talking things through. Khalid hadn't brought her here for healing. He had brought her here to break her. As the sun bled into the desert horizon that evening, Emily stood at the window, pressing her hand to her stomach. A storm brewed inside her, not just of fear, but of resolve. If she did nothing, the villa would become her tomb. Somewhere deep inside, the thought emerged, sharp and undeniable. If I don't fight back, I will never leave this place alive. The villa at night was too quiet, its silence so heavy it pressed into Emily's bones. The fountains had gone still, the staff dismissed, leaving only Khalid and her inside the palace-like walls. She sat in the dimly lit lounge, staring at the untouched glass of wine on the table, her heart beating like a trapped bird in her chest. Khalid entered without warning. His footsteps echoed, deliberate, as he approached. He carried a phone in one hand, a folder in the other. Without speaking, he tossed the folder onto the table before her. Inside were photographs, her passport copies, messages she had sent to friends in America, even bank statements she didn't know he had access to. Emily froze. "What is this?" Khalid's voice was low, dangerous. "Insurance. You think you can defy me? You think you can run back to your little world and make me a fool? No, Emily. I own your secrets now. I can destroy you with a single call." Her throat went dry. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Why do you have control everything?" He leaned closer, eyes burning. "Because control is survival. You, with your naive ideas of love and freedom, will never understand. You came here with nothing, and I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me, by chaining me to a child I never wanted." The word struck like a slap. Emily pushed the folder away, her hands trembling. "It's not about money or power. It's about life. Our child's life. And you wanted to kill it, so you can keep your empire spotless." Khalid slammed his hand against the table, making the crystal ashtray jump. "Enough. You will obey me, or you will lose everything. Do you hear me? Everything." Her fear sharpened into anger. "I already lost everything the moment I met you." For a heartbeat, the air hung still, electric. Then his hand shot out, seizing her arm. His grip was crushing, his voice venomous. "Ungrateful woman. You think anyone will believe you if you scream? You're nothing without me. Nothing." Emily tried to wrench free, but his fingers dug deeper into her flesh. Pain shot through her arm. His face loomed inches from hers, twisted in rage, spittle hitting her cheek as he hissed. "If you defy me, I will bury you where no one will ever find you." Something inside her snapped. Her eyes darted to the ashtray, its crystal edges catching the light like a weapon waiting to be claimed. Her free hand trembled as it closed around it. Khalid was still shouting, still gripping her, when instinct took over. She swung. The ashtray connected with a sickening crack against his temple. The sound reverberated to the lounge, followed by a silence so profound it swallowed her whole. Khalid staggered, his grip loosening. For a moment his expression was blank, confused, almost human. Then his knees buckled. He collapsed against the edge of the table before crashing onto the marble floor. Emily stood frozen, the ashtray still in her hand, her chest heaving. Blood began to spread beneath his head, dark and vivid against the pale stone. The silence was unbearable. Only the faint hum of the air conditioning filled the room, a mechanical indifference to the chaos that had just erupted. Emily dropped the ashtray with clatter. She stumbled back, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Her mind screamed to run, to do something, but her body refused to move. Khalid lay motionless. His once commanding presence, the shadow that filled every room, was reduced to a bleeding figure on the cold floor. Emily's breath came in ragged gasps. She pressed her hands to her mouth, fighting a sob. What had she done? She took a hesitant step closer, then another. Kneeling beside him, she reached out a trembling hand toward his chest. A faint rise and fall greeted her touch. He was still alive. Relief and terror collided inside her. If he woke, what would he do? If he didn't, what would become of her? Her reflection glimmered in the blood, pooling across the marble, haunted, fractured, unrecognizable. And in that instant, Emily knew there was no turning back. The line between victim and criminal had been crossed. The room was too still, too quiet, as if the villa itself was holding its breath. Emily's chest rose and fell in sharp, uneven bursts as she stared down at Khalid's body sprawled across the marble floor. The blood had spread wider now, a deep crimson halo that reflected the chandelier's cold light. Her hands shook uncontrollably. She pressed them against her stomach, as if shielding the child within, whispering, "Oh, God, what have I done?" The ashtray lay inches away, its crystal edge now smeared red. For a moment, Emily's thoughts spun into madness. She saw herself through the eyes of strangers. American mistress murders wealthy lover in cold blood. The headlines screamed in her mind before dissolving into a nauseating blur. She staggered back, gripping the edge of the couch to steady herself. Her breath hitched. caught between a sob and a scream. Is he dead? Emily dropped to her knees beside him, trembling fingers brushing against his neck. Nothing. No pulse she could feel, no movement of breath. The finality hit her like a tidal wave. Khalid was gone. Tears streamed down her face, but tangled in the grief was something darker, relief. The cage was open, the bars shattered. Yet freedom didn't feel like she thought it would. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, dizzy and terrified, the ground ready to give way. Her mind split in two. One voice screamed, "Run. Leave now. Pack your things and disappear before anyone comes." The other whispered, "Confess. Tell them it was self-defense. Tell the truth before the lies consume you." She rose to her feet, pacing the room. Every sound, the drip of blood, the hum of electricity, her own ragged breathing, felt like thunder in her ears. "What do I do? What do I do?" she whispered to herself, clutching her hair. Her gaze darted around the room. She wiped her fingerprints from the ashtray, then cursed herself for touching it again. She nudged it under the couch with her foot, the scraping sound echoing too loudly. Next, she grabbed tissues, pressing them against the blood pooling across the floor, but the stain spread faster than she could clean it. She dropped the tissues, horrified by the futility of it all. She thought of her family back home, her sister who still sent hopeful messages asking when she'd return. How would she explain this? How could she ever go back? Emily's knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, burying her face in her hands. For long minutes, she wept, the sobs racking her body until exhaustion hollowed her out. When the tears dried, only silence remained. And in that silence, she understood, whether she fled or confessed, she was already marked. Blood bound her to this place, to this man she had once thought her salvation. She rose again, calmer now, though her body trembled beneath the weight of what was ahead. She pulled the curtains shut, casting the lounge into shadow. Then she stepped into the bathroom, splashing cold water onto her face, scrubbing away the traces of tears and blood. The woman in the mirror stared back hollow-eyed, a stranger forged in violence. Emily whispered to her reflection, "Survive, whatever it takes." But even as she spoke the word, a sound from behind froze her blood. A cough, a groan. Emily's eyes widened. She turned slowly toward the lounge. From the shadows of the marble floor, Khalid stirred. His fingers twitched, his chest shuddered with a ragged breath. He wasn't dead, not yet. Her heart lurched into her throat. Relief clashed with terror, and she stood paralyzed between rushing to help and finishing what she had started. The silence shattered, not just in the villa, but inside her. Love, hate, guilt, and survival collided into one truth. This was far from over. The villa no longer hummed with silence. It throbbed with tension, whispers, and hurried footsteps. Khalid's staff, summoned back the morning after the incident, immediately sensed that something was wrong. Curtains remained drawn in broad daylight. Furniture sat at odd angles, and the air carried the unmistakable scent of iron, faint but present. When one of the housekeepers spotted the dark stains on the marble, panic spread. Within the hour, the police arrived. Their flashing lights cut through the desert stillness, washing the villa's pristine walls in alternating red and blue. Emily sat on the edge of the sofa, her body stiff, her face pale. Every sound, the radio's crackling, boots against tile, murmured Arabic between officers, felt like a drumbeat pounding against her skull. She couldn't run now. She couldn't even breathe without feeling the weight of eyes on her. Two detectives entered the lounge, their presence steady, professional, almost surgical. One was older, with lines etched deep into his forehead, the other younger but equally stern. They scanned the room quickly, their gazes falling on Khalid's blood still staining the floor despite Emily's frantic attempts to scrub it away. "Where is he?" the elder detective asked. Emily hesitated. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. "Upstairs. He needs help." They followed her, climbing the marble staircase in silence. In the bedroom, they found Khalid lying weakly against the pillows. His head was bandaged from a hasty attempt Emily had made to stop the bleeding. His breath rattled, shallow but present. He opened his eyes briefly as the detectives approached, but said nothing. Paramedics swept in, lifted him onto a stretcher. His eyes flickered toward Emily as they carried him out. There was no warmth in that glance, only accusation. Within minutes, the villa transformed from a palace into a crime scene. Yellow tape cordoned off rooms. Photographs were snapped of every stain, every object out of place. Officers bagged the ashtray, now clean but unmistakably the weapon. Emily was led to a chair in the corner. The younger detective sat opposite her, notebook in hand. "Tell us what happened." Her lips trembled. "It was an accident. He came at me and I—" "Did you strike him?" Her silence answered for her. The questioning continued for hours. Every word she spoke seemed to tangle her deeper in contradictions. She described love, fear, control, desperation, but the detectives only saw fragments of truth scattered between her sobs. By evening, news of Khalid Al-Mansoor's collapse had already rippled beyond the villa's walls. Journalists gathered outside the gates. Cameras flashing. Headlines forming. American tourists involved in attack on oil tycoon. The arrest came quietly but decisively. Emily's wrists were cuffed, the cold steel biting into her skin as she was escorted past a sea of flashing lights. Reporters shouted her name, snapping photos as though she were already guilty. Her mind reeled as she was pushed into the back of a patrol car. Just days earlier, she had been draped in designer dresses, sipping champagne by the pool. Now she was a spectacle, paraded before the world as the fallen mistress of a powerful man. Court followed swiftly. Khalid's lawyers, armed with resources and influence, painted Emily as a manipulative opportunist, a woman who saw in Khalid nothing but wealth and a golden ticket out of her troubled life. They spoke of betrayal, greed, and an unwanted pregnancy used as leverage. Emily's defense countered with darker truth. Years of control, emotional abuse, threats, and the night when fear pushed her past reason. They painted her not as a seductress, but as a survivor who had finally broken. The courtroom became a theater where love and violence blurred into one story too tangled to unravel neatly. Witnesses whispered about Khalid's past lovers. The staff spoke of Emily's isolation, and experts dissected the psychology of coercion. Each revelation chipped away at the polished image of the millionaire's glamorous life. But through it all, Emily sat hollow-eyed, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She no longer fought the cameras or the stares. She only whispered to herself, again and again, a mantra no one else could hear. Survive, whatever it takes. The gavel fell, but the truth remained fractured. To some, she was a murderer. To others, she was a victim. And in the shadows beyond the court, Khalid's powerful allies in the American press circled like vultures, ensuring that Emily's story was far from over. The courtroom smelled faintly of polish and old wood, but beneath its surface lingered tension thick enough to choke on. Reporters filled every available seat, their pens scratching furiously, while cameras outside broadcast every update to millions across the world. Emily sat at the defendant's table, her hands clasped tightly, knuckles white. Across from her, Khalid's family sat in united row, his brothers, his sons, his ex-wife, all radiating a cold, imperious disdain. The trial opened with Khalid's lawyers, voices sharp and polished. They painted Emily as a manipulative foreigner who had entered Khalid's life with calculated intent. She sought wealth, comfort, and power, one lawyer declared, pointing toward her with theatrical disgust. And when she realized Khalid would not marry her, she chose violence. The words struck Emily like stones, but she kept her eyes fixed on the table. When it was her defense's turn, the tone shifted. Her lawyer's voice softened, carrying the weight of her story. This was not murder. This was survival. He spoke of nights locked in luxury that felt like a prison, of threats whispered in the shadows, a control so suffocating it left bruises invisible to the naked eye. Then came the moment Emily had dreaded, her turn on the stand. The courtroom hushed as she rose, each step toward the witness box echoing in her ears. She swore the oath with trembling hands, then lowered herself into the chair, eyes avoiding Khalid's family. Her lawyer guided her gently. "Emily, tell the jury what life was like behind the villa's walls." Her voice cracked but steadied as she spoke. She told them of gifts that became chains, of phones monitored, of doors locked. She described the night she learned she was pregnant and the fury that followed. He told me the child would ruin everything, she whispered, tears gathering. He said if I didn't end it, he would end me. The prosecution objected, but the damage was done. Murmurs rippled through the room. On cross-examination, the prosecutor's questions cut like blades. If you were so afraid, why didn't you leave? Why accept his gifts, his money, his lifestyle? Why stay? Emily's throat tightened. Because I thought I loved him, she said at last, and because he made sure I had nowhere else to go. Her answer hung heavy, neither fully absolving nor fully condemning. Witnesses followed. A housekeeper testified about Emily's isolation, her pleas for freedom. A former associate of Khalid admitted, reluctantly, that he had a reputation for controlling women. But Khalid's family countered with venom, insisting Emily had manipulated him, that she had wielded her pregnancy like a weapon. The courtroom became a theater of clashing truths. Every testimony was a mirror, fractured and conflicting, reflecting both a frightened woman and a calculating lover. The jury watched silently, absorbing the storm. For them, the task was impossible: to separate love from violence, victim from villain, truth from image. As the final arguments closed, Emily sat with her head bowed. Her lawyer's words echoed. You must decide whether she struck out of malice or out of terror. Silence settled as the jury was led away. Hours stretched into eternity. Emily could hear her own heartbeat louder than the shuffle of feet, louder than the whisper of papers. At last, the jury returned. Faces unreadable, steps deliberate. The foreman rose, paper in hand. All rise. The courtroom was silent enough to hear the shuffle of robes as the judge returned. The jury had spoken, their faces pale with the weight of judgment. Emily gripped the edge of the defense table, her breath shallow, her heart rattling like a bird trapped in a cage. The foreman's voice was steady, almost attached, as he read the verdict. Gasps rippled across the gallery, followed by a suffocating hush. For Emily, the words blurred together, guilty or not guilty. What mattered was a crushing finality. Her fate was sealed, and with it, the remnants of the life she had once dreamed of. The judge's gavel came down. Sentencing was set. Cameras flashed. Reporters spilled into the corridors, and Khalid's family exhaled a cold, triumphant breath. For them, this was closure, not justice. Emily sat frozen as the bailiff's hand touched her shoulder. She rose, shackled by the eyes of strangers, the weight of betrayal pressing deeper than the iron cuffs around her wrists. Days later, the sentencing hearing unfolded with grim ceremony. The prosecution pressed for severity, framing her as a dangerous manipulator who had seduced and destroyed. Her defense begged for leniency, citing years of coercion and fear. When the judge finally spoke, his words landed like hammer strikes. The sentence was clear, years behind bars. The courtroom seemed to tilt as Emily absorbed the punishment. It was not just prison. It was erasure, a stripping of identity, a future defined not by who she was but by what she had done. She was led away, the crowd's whispers trailing behind her like smoke. Inside the gray walls of confinement, time slowed. Days bled into nights, marked only by the clatter of meal trays and the echo of distant footsteps. Emily replayed her past like a broken reel. The glittering dinners, the whispered promises, the shadows in Khalid's eyes. Love had been her anchor and her noose. At night, she dreamed of the child she never held, a fragile hope extinguished before it could begin. In her cell, she pressed a hand against her stomach, remembering the life that might have saved her or doomed her further. That loss cut deeper than any gavel, any verdict. Meanwhile, Khalid's empire thrived without him. His sons took control of his businesses, tightening their grip with ruthless efficiency. The world remembered him not as a tyrant or manipulator, but as a visionary lost too soon. His name adorned headlines, while Emily's became a cautionary tale. The imbalance stung. He was memorialized. She was demonized. Yet beneath the official stories lay truths no jury could untangle. Secrets buried under marble floors. Whispers lost in the halls of power. One evening, staring through the narrow slit of her cell window, Emily whispered to herself, was it love, or was it all betrayal? The question looped endlessly, without answer. Perhaps it had been both. Perhaps that was the cruelest truth of all. In the stillness, she realized betrayal had not come from Khalid alone. It lived in her own choices, in the silence she kept when escape was possible, in the desperate hope that love could transform a prison into a home. The echoes of betrayal lingered in every memory, every regret, every heartbeat she still carried. She knew she would never escape them, no matter how many years passed. The final chapter of her story was not the sentence, nor Khalid's empire continuing without him. It was a quiet acceptance that some wounds never close, some truths never clear, and some costs are irreversible. And as the cell door clanged shut for the night, Emily closed her eyes, letting the darkness answer her where words no longer could.